We all know what it's like when things are going well, and then all of a sudden, wham, we run into an unanticipated piece of reality that throws us right off course. The question is, how do we deal with this random life crap and get our life back on track again? Join me today as I break down this section from our book, Letters That Move the World: Intentional Acts of Gratitude, and provide you with some practical tools on how you can begin to dissolve the tensions and frustrations of life and find your way back to gratitude. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our show. Now, today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you one of the chapters from our book, Letters That Move the World: Intentional Acts of Gratitude. So if you listened to last week's episode, you would have heard myself and my co-author, Corey Ashley, talking about our book and breaking it down from beginning to end, basically. If you haven't listened to that episode, go check it out, because we wrote this book about 10 years ago called Letters That Move the World: Intentional Acts of Gratitude. And this book was really designed to create a focus moment for positive change in the world, where we can create literally this tidal wave of gratitude that washes over the planet and raises the level of human consciousness. That's really the goal in a nutshell from it. And it all starts with every single individual. Every individual writes a letter from their heart to one of the heroes in their lives, and then that starts to create this ripple effect throughout the entire planet. And so we had been working with that for quite some time, and that book influenced a lot of the work that we did in other ways. But I feel like right now, at this point in time, on where everybody is and the stresses and the challenges and the degree of division and uncertainty and all of these things that our planet across the globe has been experiencing, I feel like this is such an important time to create a wave of a high vibrational field like gratitude and just share that across the planet. So we are making this as accessible as possible. I've just done a whole series of 10 different videos breaking down the different sections of the book that are all going to be up on our website, lettersthatmovetheworld.com. And I'll put a link for that in the show notes. You can go there. There's no cost for anything. You'll get an idea of what's going on as all of the videos are getting uploaded. Those will all get uploaded over the course of this next week. So you'll get a very clear idea of what to do just by watching those videos. You can also check out the book. Our book is up on Amazon, so you can purchase the actual paper copy book, or you can even do a Kindle edition book for a very low price. And over this last few weeks, I have actually been putting together an entire online course, taking people through the entire book and the processes of it. It's got meditations with music on it. It goes through chapter by chapter, breaking everything down, and I walk you through the different processes so that at the end of it, we're all set and ready to go. And then we are looking to release all of our letters between this December 21st to January 7th. Let's finish the year off with a big wave of gratitude and roll right into the new year and start the new year off with a big wave of gratitude. We know, and there's a section in the book called The Science of Gratitude, and we break down the power of gratitude and what it's been shown to do. And so we know the power that it has. And if we can get enough people, I feel like we can hit this tipping point where we can create some really significant shift. So what I'm going to do today is I'm actually sharing a section of the online course that I did on how to work with random life crap. So random life crap is literally when things seem to be going okay and then we run into those things that just happen throughout our day, the challenges that we get across, the small ones right up to the big ones. And ultimately, how do we work with them? How do we process them? And how do we find our way back to gratitude? How do we find our way back to feeling appreciative? And so I break this all down in this next section. I'm sharing with you the one of the sections of this chapter called Random Life Crap with you today. So it's going to have some good information, some points that you can start to do, some practical things that you can start to incorporate today when you start to run into it. Because chances are random life crap happens almost every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And so we need to be able to know how to process it so it doesn't just keep affecting our life. And then we get stuck in that pattern, and then we actually start to create more random life crap. So when it shows up, what do we do about it? So I hope you guys like this episode. The online course is just being finished up this week, and it should be up on our Inspire Health podcast site under courses. So I'll let everybody know once that's up and running. But otherwise, check out the website. The videos will be up over the course of this week, and we should have a lot of great stuff ready for you. All right, everybody, thank you so much. And I feel like this is such an important mission that we are on right at the moment. And the more that you can share this out and spread the word, and we can get as many people as possible to be a part of this movement, it will make a bigger and bigger impact. So I thank you in advance for your support. All right, everybody, enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Inspire Health Podcast. Your life is about to get a whole lot better. Have you ever felt like you tried everything and yet still couldn't find the answers or the solutions that you were seeking? Whether you're dealing with chronic illness, physical or emotional pain, I want you to know that your body is the most sophisticated machine on planet Earth. Your body holds unfathomable wisdom. Trust in it and learn from it. Know that there are answers and there are solutions to your specific health challenges, and we will be uncovering all of them here on the Inspire Health Podcast. I'm so excited to be a part of your healing journey. Your transformation starts now. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Chapter 8, and this is called RLC, or Random Life Crap, Life's Little Ripple Blockers. So everybody has experienced this. This is when everything is going pretty well. You are rippling along at 90 miles per hour, and you run into a wall of unanticipated reality. What do you do? I think at some point, most of us hit this, probably even on an almost daily basis. Everything seems to be running okay, and then all of a sudden something goes wrong. And it could be the little things. It could be like you just got a flat tire, or it could be that your computer broke down and you lost information on it. Or it could be more challenging, where maybe something like you get laid off from work, or you lose your job, or your relationship ends, or even the really tough ones that sometimes where, we might lose a relative or a loved one. I mean, they can be really difficult. And they can range from being quite mild to being really, really challenging. And how do we work with them? And how do we move back eventually to a place of gratitude? Well, the first thing I think that's most important is that allow yourself to feel what you are feeling. Be honest with yourself. None of this is about trying to spiritually bypass what you're experiencing and think that we can live in this heightened state of gratitude our entire life and not really be a part of this world. A lot of times what happens is we can be feeling hurt, or we can be feeling angry, or we can be feeling sad or guilty, or some of these heavier vibration emotions. But then we're trying to say, nope, I'm going to pretend that I feel happy, almost like fake it until you make it. And there's stuff about that statement that doesn't ring true to me. You got to remember that the core of the ripple is how you feel. Okay, that's what dictates the core of your ripple. Now, if you're living on this planet, you're going to go in and out of it, right? You don't live in a place of gratitude all the time, or else you have to be almost saint-like in order to be able to do that. But the vast majority of us, we are going to have different experiences that are going to hit us, and we're supposed to feel different emotions. It's not like all lower emotions are bad. The problem is that you just don't want to be living in those lower emotions all the time. But you need to experience them, because that's where a lot of growth and lessons and awarenesses come from, is in some of those lower based emotions, when we do feel heavier and we feel hurt in those things. So the reality is that you need to feel it. And so what do I mean by feel it? So there was an exercise that I used to practice, and I still do a lot of times. And the idea is to get into sensation and out of thinking about it and ruminating and lamenting on it. Because every time we ruminate and lament, we just keep the same process going. We stir up the same emotions, we create the same brain chemistry, and we keep ourselves stuck in a pattern. And if anybody's ever gone through a argument with somebody, if you find that you are ruminating on that argument and replaying it in your brain and saying it over and over again and lamenting on it, all you're doing is keeping yourself stuck in this lower vibrational field that is ultimately going to start to have troubles. So how do we get the juice out of it? How do we get the benefits out of staying within certain emotions, but not lingering so long that they start to become a problem? So the exercise that I like originally was the acronym for FEAR, F-E-A-R. And the F stood for feel it in your body. So you make the sensation you're experiencing, you make it very physical. So say I am feeling resentful at someone. Say I'm feeling angry at someone and resentful. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to become very conscious of what does the feeling of anger and resentment feel like in my body. Maybe I feel it in my solar plexus and it feels tight. Maybe I feel heat in my chest. Maybe my breathing starts to feel shallow. Maybe my body starts to feel hot. So I become very curious about the actual sensation that my body is experiencing, the feeling. Okay. The E stands for embrace the feeling, because a lot of times we don't really like the sensation that comes up. And so we push it away or we ruminate on it. We do one of these two things. We either ignore it, we try to push it away because we don't want to deal with it, or we blow it up and make it a much bigger fire than it needs to be. And so the idea is that first, feel it in your body and then embrace it. So when you start to feel it and you feel some of that discomfort of the sensation because we don't really like it, it's can I open my arms up and just let it in and be like, all right, resentment, anger, show me what you got. What do you feel like? Let me get to know you a little bit better. And so you embrace this feeling. And then the FEA, the A stands for allow the thoughts to dissolve. Because what usually happens is as soon as we get a strong feeling, we have got a certain storyline and dialogue that's completely attached to that feeling. And every time we get that feeling, the storyline starts up. And it's usually some sort of negative fantasy spiral that we tend to get in there. And so what we need to do is allow the thoughts to dissolve. If I start to come in with thinking, especially if say I got in an argument with somebody and then I'm trying to get in, but they're wrong, but I'm right, they're wrong, they need to know this, that kind of stuff, thanks for playing, but I'm putting you over here. All this is about is feeling. I'm not thinking. I'm just allowing myself to feel. And in the process of feeling and staying with sensation without stirring it back up with thoughts, you're allowing on a neurochemical level for those neuropeptides and these molecules of emotion to actually metabolize and start to dissolve. And in a book called Stroke of Genius, Jill Bolte Taylor talked about this, and she was a neuroscientist, and she said that for the most part, the neurochemistry of emotion lingers for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So when you get triggered by a feeling, if you can stay with the sensation and allow the emotion to just dissolve, it'll eventually dissolve and metabolize and break up. So when you're driving and you get caught off by somebody driving faster and pulls in front of you, when you get that road rage feeling, technically that should only linger for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes from a purely physiological standpoint. But when was the last time we really just stayed angry for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes? Most of the time, we keep the cycle going because what we think. Our thoughts keep generating more of the same scenario. And worse is we actually create a habit in it. So to dissolve that, we want to give ourselves some space to just feel without thinking. And so the more we practice this, the easier it gets. And you start to find that you get triggered less and less by the little things. When you have really big things, when they're big ones, like when your relationship breaks down, that was a relationship you really wanted to be in, or not. Sometimes it's still even difficult, or big losses of jobs, or big scares, or when people pass away. I'm not saying that all of that is supposed to be completely dissolved and worked with within 90 seconds to 2 minutes. But when you get hit by the strong emotion, these are processes you can do to allow yourself and allow your body to metabolize what's going on. Okay. And then the last part, the R, the FEAR in fear. So feel it in your body, embrace the feeling, allow the thoughts to dissolve. And then the R is once you've allowed that sort of 90 seconds to 2 minutes, there's often a bit of a calming that happens. It's like there's a bit of a sigh of relief almost that can start to happen. And then the R is to remember the millions of others going through something similar. And the idea that this exercise, when we go through a certain amount of suffering, it is an exercise that allows us to build compassion. So we find compassion for ourselves and we also find compassion for others. I mean, suffering has this way of either pushing us and separating us from others, or it can actually be a glue that pulls us all together and unites us. And the idea is that if we can use suffering when we go through them ourselves, this is a process that allows us to connect more deeply to other people, knowing that we're all in this world together and going through very similar situations. And as much as they might feel incredibly intense for us when we're going through them, they're not necessarily unique. Everybody goes through very similar situations. So, the first part is to be gentle with yourself and allow yourself to feel what is actually going on. Don't try and pretend it's not there. Don't try and rise above it when you're not actually feeling it. The emotions that you're feeling, you can only be with where you are, but know that they're transitory. Okay. And know that you can't pretend to be somewhere else that you're not. You're better off to be honest with where you're feeling and allow that to dissolve. Allow yourself to alchemize it. What they used to say in some of the Buddhist teachings is that when you can stay with some of these uncomfortable emotions and allow them to just be there without adding anything to it, it's like an ember. It's like if you have an ember and you hold it in your hands and you don't touch it, it'll just burn itself out. But we don't, it's not what we tend to do. When we go through it, we blow on it and we throw sticks and twigs on it and then we throw logs on it. Next thing we know, it's a massive forest fire and then it becomes really hard to work with. So the idea is don't do anything with it other than be there and hold it within yourself, and don't blow on it. Don't do anything to it. Just let it be there and watch it. And it will kind of pass on its own. And that when it dissolves, you naturally then open up to a place of openness, awareness, and warmth. And I've experienced this firsthand when I've been triggered by something. I remember one example where I was when my stepson was, I believe, about 14, and he had snapped back at my wife about something. And I remember right off the bat kind of feeling, whoa, triggered, like, I got to shut that down right now. That's inappropriate. And I could feel myself just about to react from a place of more frustration. And I caught myself and I just breathed. And I did this exercise, I sat with it. And what was really neat was I wasn't trying to find a new way to look at the situation, but it naturally evolved. So as I was sitting with the sensation of it, probably after about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, naturally this question came up was, wonder why he did that. That was the openness, that maybe there was more to it than him just being rude, which was where my head first went. And as I sat with that, then the next thing that came up was, I wonder if he's okay. I wonder if something happened that threw him off today. And then I was able to actually ask him. I just said, my stepson's name was Sebastian. I said, Sebs, is everything okay? And I said, anything going on? And then it came out that he had gotten into an argument with one of his friends and he was really upset. And so then I was able to actually, from a heart level, connect with him. And then once we were able to kind of let that dissolve, then I could come to a place where I could say, okay, probably owe your mom an apology, right? And then we could actually get to there. But if I came right away from my place of being, you're wrong, I'm right, that was rude, without thinking there was anything else more to it, it would have been met with just defensiveness. And what I would ultimately want to see happen would not have happened anyways. So this practice is really powerful. And I think whenever we get triggered, especially the regular day-to-day ones that often just create a lot of stress for us, if we can practice this exercise, what you'll find is that eventually this starts to become your default. Things happen, and rather than getting triggered and running with it and turning it into more and more and more stressors, you start to dissolve them and you start to find there's less and less things that really trigger you. And when you practice with these ones on the low level, like I always think, practice with things like impatience. Like if you're in a lineup and it's just taking too long and you feel yourself getting impatient, or practice when traffic's moving slower than you'd like it to move. Like ones that aren't touching the really big buttons, but the ones that start to give you some practice, right? And you start to build these neural networks. You start to build a habit. And the more that you practice that, the easier it is for that to help you out when you're hitting some of the more difficult ones that usually have to do with loved ones and our friends and families and those types of things. Okay, so the other part is that it's about what you do inside. So what I'm talking about with this is that there is this inside world and there is this outside world. And which world do we have control over and which world do we not have control over? I hope you said the external world, because the external world you do not have control over. And this is what creates some of the most amount of suffering in people's lives, is that we are constantly feel like we are at the mercy of what the external world throws at us. And that we either like it or we don't like it. And if it's throwing at something at and if it's throwing something at us that we don't like, then it creates suffering. And if it throws us something that we do like, then we get pleasure from it. And we end up in this pleasure pain cycle over and over and over again. And so when I talk about it's about what you do inside, what we're wanting to do is build more resilience. We want to build more buffer so that we can handle life more effectively, so that when things happen that we don't like from the external world, we can manage it better. And do you remember in the episode when we talked about the science of gratitude, from the psyche part of it, that when we come from a place of gratitude, we build more resilience to deal with life's challenges. That's a part of what happens when we start to come from gratitude. So as you're practicing this and you're rippling out from a place of gratitude and you've been doing that, you're going to find that you naturally start to build your resilience. You've got more buffer for dealing with life. And you'll see this with people. You could have three different people and the same situation happens, and each one of them could be completely different on how they're affected by it. Someone could lose their job, and one person might be absolutely devastated and completely a mess and go completely into a cycle of fear and life's over. Whereas another person could have the same experience and sort of be, well, I guess there's something better for me. And now I can start to open up to figure out what that is. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen. Now, those are pretty different ways of dealing with the exact same situation. Job's gone. How are you going to work with it? This is all within our power. Okay. So it's about what you do inside. And remember that when you connect to that feeling on the inside, once you can get to it, which means allow the reality of what you're feeling to first dissolve and burn out a little bit, and take the time you need to do it. It's not always the big ones, sometimes take a little longer, but just allow it to keep dissolving. And then start to remember that where we start to come to inside is what we start to create more outside of us, and ultimately what we're going to bring back in. So we want to deal with what we're authentically feeling and honor it and allow it to dissolve and allow it to alchemize. But we don't want to be ruminating and lamenting on it unnecessarily. Okay. And then we want to get back to how we start to build resilience inside, how we get back to those ripples so that we can start to create more of it and bring it back again. And it's important to remember that it comes down to choices. So ultimately, it's our choice on where we want to focus on. Now, I'm not saying it's always an easy choice. A lot of times it can be a really difficult choice. And there's sometimes where I haven't been able to right off the bat come back to that. And I do sit and ruminate and lament a little bit on certain things, but a whole lot less than I ever used to, the more that I practice this type of exercise. I realize that ultimately the choice comes back to me and how do I want to work with it. And I also know that if I lament on certain things that are not helpful for me, I start to create more of that energy in my world, and that affects people around me, especially if you have kids. You'll notice it. If you are in a stress state or a frustrated state, your kids will pick up on that almost immediately. They are such a great mirror and for us as far as how we are working with things. And it's one of the first things I'll talk to parents about when they bring their kids in to work with their behavioral concerns that they want to see corrected. There's different pieces to it, but one of the big pieces is how are the parents? A lot of times the parents are overly stressed and they start to get short and all of these different things, and that gets affects the kids around us. So if we recognize that, then we know that the choice starts within us. If we can change where we're coming from, we will see that it will reflect outwards and people will react differently to us. Try it with your kids. Just try it and see. Notice next time when you are really short or stressed or upset, see what they behave like. See if they're reflecting that back at you, that they start to be a little bit more upset quickly. They don't listen as well. Like all of these different things that start to bother us are going to come amplified when we're not in a great place. And when we're in a really grounded place and full of appreciation and gratitude and joy, you'll see that ripple out to the kids too. So really important to remember, not always easy, but it is ultimately a choice. Okay. So from that choice, how do we actually get back to gratitude? And I think there's a couple strategies that I tend to look at. So the first thing is I always honor where I'm actually at. So there's no sense in trying to find gratitude until I find myself starting to dissolve the intensity of the emotions that got triggered from whatever the initial reaction was or whatever the initial situation was. And once that starts to get dissolved a little bit, I start to first think about past experiences. What are some of the things that I have been appreciative for? What are some of the things that I have gratitude for? See if I can muster up and authentically connect to that again. And sometimes you might not find gratitude for the situation that triggered you. So maybe your relationship ended. Well, you might not be able to look at that right at the moment and find gratitude for that at this point in time. A lot of times we find gratitude for it maybe a couple years down the road when we realize that that was probably a good thing. But at the moment, doesn't actually fit. So if you can't find gratitude for the actual situation, can you find it for other areas in your life? Maybe it's not coming right there right now, but can you find gratitude for the fact that maybe you've got a great social network, a support system that you can rely on, you can talk to? Maybe you can be really grateful for the fact that you're healthy enough that you can go and exercise. Maybe you can be grateful for the fact that you live in a place where you can get out to a park and have access to nature. Whatever it is, you start to go through the different aspects of your life and see if you can find something else that you can be grateful for, even if it's not to do with the thing that's first triggered you. The other thing that also helps is go back and read some of the hero's letters. I find that if I'm really feeling down and I read some of those letters, that can very quickly transform my feeling. It provides a perspective that is so powerful. And all this is around choices is perspective. You get more choices when you can see your life from multiple perspectives. This is where things like gratitude are powerful because they put you up the mountain higher where you get a larger vista of what's going on. And you start to be able to see many more perspectives and options. And you can start to see how you can see your life from a different viewpoint. And that's what allows you to then have these different choices. So getting back to gratitude, start by trying to connect to different areas in your life that you can feel gratitude for. If you're still having a hard time, reread some of the letters, the hero's letters that are in the book. A lot of times that will catapult you into feeling more appreciative, or at least bump you out of the intensity of what you're feeling because it provides perspective. And then the other thing to remember is that it's really difficult for yourself to occupy two very different emotional states at the same time. So if you can find something to be appreciative about and you can start to really connect to that feeling, it's difficult to be angry at the same time that you're feeling appreciative. Okay? They can't occupy the same space. Okay? So last in this is that when random life crap happens and it's totally getting you down, here's something that you can consider. The Buddha said, "Let us rise up and be thankful. For if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little. And if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we got sick, at least we didn't die. So let us all be thankful." Okay, I'll see you in the next chapter. Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to invest in your health and well-being. Since this podcast is brand new, reviews and subscribers are so vital for us to get off the ground and share this really important information. So if you found this information valuable, please post a review and subscribe to the podcast so you'll get our newest episodes. Also, if you know of someone who would benefit from this, please share it with them. You can also find us on Instagram at #InspireHealthPodcast. If you have a question that you'd like to be addressed, direct message me on Instagram or leave a comment on one of my posts. I would love to hear from you. And you can grab our show notes and free resources for each episode at inspirehealthpodcast.com. So be sure to go online and check it out.